So, welcome everyone. Welcome everyone. And I'm just going to start a minute or two early. Today, of course, our featured speaker, Barbara. Coming attractions. Jane Wood will be speaking next month, and so she's just going to say a word or two because she doesn't live in the community, but she knows a lot of folks here, and she's spoken at the Bird Club.
Okay, hi, hello, I hope to see you all next month. I am with the Coastal Prairie Conservancy, formerly known as the Katy Prairie Conservancy, and you are living very close to the Katy Prairie. So knowing what's around you and what this ecosystem is all about is what I'm going to be talking about. And one of our newest initiatives is green burial. And I don't know whether you've heard of it, it's conservation cemeteries. And I'll get into it, it's a very cool topic. So
All the greenies, come. Thank you, Jane. Well, it is my pleasure, and can you hear me close enough? If I stand near Barbara, she's got the microphone. To introduce Barbara. Barbara has been so generous. She came up and volunteered and said, gee, you know, and she mentioned some of you who have spoken, Ms. Roush and Tans and Janet, others, that she had some important information she wanted to share based on her 20 years or more experience with people with Alzheimer's disease. She got her nursing degree in Pennsylvania, but just as soon as she could get to Texas, she came here and she got her licensed professional counseling degree at Houston Baptist. She actually did police work with crisis intervention. You know, when I watched Star Trek back in the old days, one of the things I loved is the guy on the left-hand side of the captain was the counselor, because we understand that so many of the issues the police face are not crimes, they're people who have mental illnesses. And she did that, and she actually worked at psychiatric hospitals, and I wasn't aware of the PICU. I was thinking in a pediatric intensive care. No, it's the psychiatric intensive care unit. And she did crisis intervention, especially involving episodes of mass shooting, more common these days. Anyway, then she did private practice with some companies here in Houston, and started a program at United Methodist Church on Memorial Drive, which many of us go to. And then when she moved here, she volunteered her services to start an Alzheimer's group. So really, we are so lucky to have Barbara here today. Please welcome her.
Well, we're going to visit our brains today, so I hope everybody brought one. Did you all have your brains with you today? Because that's going to be our topic. Now, I would like to know who of you has a personal connection to or is living with someone with Alzheimer's or one of the other dementias. And if you feel free to raise your hand, if you feel comfortable, please do. Otherwise, you do not. Okay. I see a smattering of hands. And I realized, I'm on the third floor of Mockingbird, and I realized when I would be talking to different people, maybe I'm on my way down to dinner, the topic was their spouse, their husband or wife, and I'm having this issue or this problem. So the more I thought about it, I thought instead of standing in the hall talking about Alzheimer's, I would start a group. So I have a group once a month on the fourth Tuesday. In fact, I had my group this morning. And I asked them, I said, well, what do you think people would like to know? Or what would you suggest? You've been coming to my group for a year. And they said, go to a support group. Now, I didn't pay them to say that, but they thought it was very helpful because they find out that they're not alone and that they support each other and they learn from each other, and I learn from them. So currently, there's an estimated 50 million people worldwide that are living with dementia, And by 2050, they project 14 to 16 million. I mean, we're living longer, and as we age, our risk of getting dementia goes up. So I just wanted to talk about a couple of the dementias. There are more than 100 dementias, but some of the common ones or the more frequent ones, well, the biggest dementia group is 2/3, and it's Alzheimer's disease. So there's also vascular dementia, and that's people that have strokes, so they don't have a good blood flow to the brain. And older Hispanics are 1.5 more times to have a stroke and develop dementia. And African Americans are twice as likely to develop a dementia. So I'll ask you, what do you think is the #1 greatest risk of developing this disease? The #1 greatest risk.
Getting older.
Bingo. Give her a prize, Frankie. So the more common dementias are vascular, Alzheimer's. Lewy body is 10% of dementias. Frontotemporal is about 5%, and there are many, many others. So somebody that we know and most of us really did enjoy, is Robin Williams. And we found out that he was diagnosed with Parkinson's disease at age 61. And there wasn't until he had an autopsy, he died at 63, was that he had the Lewy body dementia. So Frankie and I talked about that a lot and thought, here is this person that's always on, and he's a medium, and he has this wonderful energy, that it must have been very difficult to accept that diagnosis, because he did commit suicide. Dr. Alois Alzheimer, in 1906, he was the first physician to do an autopsy on one of his patients. She was a 50-year-old woman. Is she up there? There she is. And she had symptoms of paranoia, sleep disorders, memory disturbance, and she was very aggressive, and she was confused. She lived about 5 years with those symptoms. But what Dr. Alzheimer did for us, he discovered on autopsy, we have slices of the brain, that the brain, you can see on the left, is a healthy brain, and then on the right is probably what he saw, that there's plaques and tangles that are proteins, but they're not the kind of proteins that belong in our brains. So they attack the cells or the neurons, and we have 100 billion neurons up there. And so this Alzheimer's is a very gradual disease. It can go on for 8 years, 12 years, 20 years. And there's a close-up. The brain on the right, you can see the shrinkage, and the brain ends up looking like a piece of Swiss cheese. It's full of holes. And you can see that on there, the holes, and it's gradually shrinking. And as the plaques take over on the outside of the neurons, then the tangles come in. And I understand that these plaques and tangles are fatty, sticky type of substances. And of course, until they interfere and cause symptoms, we don't know what's going on. So they're called amyloid plaques. They form outside the nerve cell, which is called the neuron. And this results in 2 effects. It blocks the nerve cell communication. If you think of a computer needs to talk to different parts to communicate. So our brain it's the epicenter of our mind. It's very powerful. It's the most important organ. And ironically, it only weighs 3 pounds. But the tau protein, when that starts tangles, then the cells start to die, and they die gradually. There's 4 different lobes of the brain, so it can start in different places with different people. But the thing is, it's progressive, and eventually it's fatal. Okay, there's 2 types of Alzheimer's. One is the early stage before 65. That's quite rare. That's only 5% of the cases. I do 2 Alzheimer groups. I do one here and I do one at, as Frankie said, at the Methodist Church. And we had a woman in there that was in her late 30s. Her mother had died from Alzheimer's. And that's a very strong familial pattern. My beloved sister, who's 80 years old and lives in Fulshire, was just diagnosed with mild cognitive impairment. And that was very hard for me to take in. So because you have mild cognitive impairment doesn't mean you're going to progress into Alzheimer's. And those of us that are like 60, 70, 80, I feel that we all probably have some level, you know, you have trouble hearing and all sorts of things. So some of that, if we are confused occasionally, or we can't remember things, there's a whole list of symptoms that are normal aging versus Alzheimer aging. So if you can't remember something, or as we say, what am I doing in the bedroom? I know I walked in here, but I don't know why I came in here. But if I stop for a minute, well, then I'll recall. The difference with memory loss with Alzheimer's is the forgetting, usually there's no remembering. It's kind of, certain things are gone permanently. So the late onset, the older we get, the more the risk goes that we will develop dementia. It rises steeply after age 75, and symptoms, we could be aware of symptoms at age 65. And we're all under 65, so we don't need to worry, right? Alzheimer has 3 stages.
Oh, go back. I think it jumped. Push
Yes,
up,
it did.
up arrow, up arrow.
Oh, wait. It did jump.
There you go.
Okay. There are 3 stages, the early stage, the middle stage, and the late stage. And they have different names, but that's basically the 3 different stages. So with my beloved sister Jean, she's in the early stage. And if I call her, which I do every Sunday, and I talk to her, she tells me she's working outside in her yard, and she and her husband, and they're doing a lot of planting, and she loves flowers. And then we'll talk about something else, some other part of the family, and then maybe 10 minutes in the conversation, she said, we're working outside, and she tells me about the gardening that they're doing. And she really likes it, but the thing is, she is repeating that. If I talk to her for 30 minutes, she describes what she's doing 3 times. And she's not aware that she's telling me, and I don't point that out to her, I just listen to her. Now, I might tell Janet, who I eat lunch with sometimes or dinner, I might tell her a story about my cat that stopped using the litter box, because that's been troublesome, and she bit me, and I have all kind of issues with my badass cat. But anyway, so the next night I'm going to eat with somebody else, and I'll start to tell them that story, and then I'll think, I'm embarrassed, did I tell that before? But that is more aging than Alzheimer's, because I'm with different groups, I'm on different days, and I might even ask them, did I tell you that before? So that's okay, that's kind of okay. Now, the middle stage is the longest stage, and that can be 10 years, it can be less, but between the early, middle, and late stage, that is definitely the longest. And the person is unaware of the cognitive deficits, as I mentioned. And we have the wanderers, and the wanderers are not Janet, that's group. The wanderers,
As far as we know.
I mean, they are Janet's group, but in Alzheimer's, about half of the people, it's quite common in the groups that I do with the caregivers, that about half of the people wander. They get lost. They will go out of the apartment and they could be anywhere. Fortunately, we have a good security team that is used to going out and bringing people back. And I think it's wise if you have good neighbors, and I think we all have plenty of good neighbors here, if you tell them that sometimes my wife will leave the apartment, so if you see her down the hall, please escort her back to me, type of thing. One lady, and there's this neat little tracker, it's a little disc, I saw it this morning, that you can carry in your wallet, and so you can set that up so you know where the person is. So one of our lovely ladies today left the apartment, her husband was dozing, and she ended up sitting in her car in the parking lot. Happily, she didn't have the keys, or she didn't start it. She was in the car in the parking lot. So the wondering is quite common. Not everybody does, but. And these kinds of symptoms are certainly troublesome for caregivers. I think caregivers have the hardest job in the world. I really do. My husband died from a glioblastoma brain tumor. He didn't have Alzheimer's, but as the tumor progressed over 18 months, he had some personality changes and some confusion. And I'm a nurse, so when they call me and say, go to the hospital, his anticoagulants are causing bleeding, and I was there visiting him one time, and he went into a code. I called a code. I was the only one in the room. But when the oncologist, at kind of the end of the 18 months, said, Barbara, now he's going to have personality changes. He's going to be quick to anger. He's going to be loud. He's going to be not real pleasant. Now, this was mild-mannered Clark Kent that I married. He was, accepts everybody, they're kind of a laid-back person. They just don't react to this and that. You know, they kind of just smooth along. I went home and cried because I thought, I couldn't imagine, it was a second marriage, him yelling at me or calling me names or being angry with me. And that, I went home and cried because I thought that I can't take. I can call a code, but you have to take that. That's part of it. So, one of my group members, she got really frustrated with the repetition. Her husband would ask her, what are we having for dinner? And she would say, pork chops. And 30, so she would add up the times, and one day it was 37 times that he asked her what they were having for dinner. So you have to get creative. She put Post-it notes everywhere. And for some reason, he looked at the notes and he stopped asking her. And she had no idea if that would work, but it did. Okay, late stage, there's 24-hour care required. The individual's no longer independent. They're unable to perform, we could say, activities of daily living, like feeding themselves and taking a shower. One of the ladies in my other group, when we would sit with her, she would turn her spoon upside down. And no matter how much I tried to get her to turn it up so she could do the food, she couldn't do it. And she just, to her it was upside down and that was normal. So we had to end up feeding her. But so those kind of things, 80% of people have caregivers that are family, and they are expensive to get outside caregivers. So, and most of the caregivers, I read 80% are unpaid. So, and if you hire private caregivers, I have one man in my other group that's a writer, and he's quite wealthy, and he said he hired about 50 people before he could get people that could take care of his wife, that could relate well to his wife. You know, they don't want to do this, they want to do that, or they're on their cell phones or whatever, but he has a group now, so he's very fortunate. But that's also very expensive. One of the men in my Memorial Drive group, his wife is in a facility, she's on hospice, and he does go to see her. And he got very sad the other day, and he said, my wife is no longer the person I married. She's gone. And it was just so poignant that she's there physically, and she will not be much longer, but the person he married is gone, so. You have to take care of yourself, and that's not easy. I think caregivers suffer from exhaustion, from loneliness, anger. When they get angry, then they feel, or guilty, they feel bad, and I tell them those are, think of it as puddles of emotion. There's your puddle of anger, there's your puddle of resentment, and they're all valid feelings. And because of the progressive disease and because it lasts so long, it's easy for them to get overwhelmed. And statistically, quite a few caregivers die before their person that they're taking care of. And it's very expensive. If you're at Bio Vista, or no matter where you are, it's very, very expensive. So there's the financial worries. Anybody have any questions or comments so far? Janet?
So, my mom, they kept saying for 8 years she had dementia, not Alzheimer's. And so how do you tell the difference between dementia and Alzheimer's?
Dementia is not the name of a disease, it's a term. You picture the big umbrella is dementia. Like I said, it's a term, it's not the name of the disease. And then under that is Alzheimer's, which are 2/3 of the cases, or 80%. And then under that is vascular, people that have strokes. And then under that is the one that Robin Williams had, Lewy body dementia, and so forth and so on. So those are the specific types of dementia.
So I think my mom had vascular because she had a series of strokes,
Okay.
but they never called it that. They just said, no, she doesn't have Alzheimer's, she has dementia.
Well, like I said, dementia is a term rather than the name of a disease.
Thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome. So what do caregivers, anybody have any suggestions about managing caregiving that has been helpful to them? You had your hand up. Is it Jane?
Yes, it was a different question, you can continue with that, and we can come to me later.
That's all right. Go ahead and ask it.
I guess my question is what actually kills a person if it's their brain? Is it some other physical problem that ends up being their demise?
Well, the brain is, Swiss cheese is increasing continuously. It starts in one lobe, there are 4 lobes, it goes to the other lobes. So when they get to the late stage, their total care, swallowing difficulty is a problem. And they stop wanting to eat, and they go on hospice care, and they die from having the most important organ in the body has failed.
Okay.
Okay. When I was walking my dog this morning, I thought about, we talk about heart disease, and we talk about diabetes, and we talk about liver disease, but we don't label like brain failure much. You don't say, oh, he or she died of brain failure, but that is basically what this disease is. So, what can you do if you're a caregiver? There are communication tips, and this is a wide range of things, 60 practical strategies. And I'm so used to being verbal or explaining things or, looking at words that way, but with Alzheimer's, there are 5 senses. What are they? What's one? Touch,
Hearing.
taste,
Sight.
smell. Mhm. So you get to use your senses. Like I said, if you get creative, sometimes you find something that works that you didn't think of with your loved one. Tactile, touching, fabrics, feeling different, maybe furs, or there's a lot of these soft blankets available. And there's a book, Alzheimer's Activities, that has tons of things that you can buy. One of the ladies in the group has a dog she ordered specifically for people with dementia. It's a stuffed dog, reminds me of my dog a little bit. It's very soft, and she gave it to her husband, and she didn't think that he would want to touch it or do anything with it. And then she sent me a picture about a week later. He's sitting watching television. He's got this little stuffed dog on his chest. And they're not really stuffed, they're soft, but they look very real. Things like clay, and I remember using that yucky gray clay in elementary school. I think I made an ashtray then, but that wouldn't be very popular now. But I think that would be good for people to have a lump of clay, it's all that tactile and moving their hands and their muscles. Visits with animals, those people that we have lots of animals here. And I see a lot of people in wheelchairs that have a caregiver, and they're on the circuit that I go on every morning. And there must be 1,000 squirrels out there, and they're sitting up eating their little acorns or whatever. And all kind of ducks and all kind of birds and the herons. And I think these people, that it's a treat for them if they are still alert to have someone take them around the lake, because it's very pretty. And right now this place looks beautiful with all the flowers. So, looking at photo albums seems to be quite popular. I don't know if my mother had dementia. She was blind when she was in her 80s, but she would always be talking. She was a nurse too, so most of her conversation was about her nursing school days. That's kind of where her brain was focused. So she would look at photo albums. I'm a nurse, my sister's a nurse, and we would have, a history of that and pictures. And that's something that she really enjoyed. People that like art, there's lots of famous paintings, bird watching, visiting an aquarium. Like I said, you really have to think outside your own little box. I think finger painting would be great, or painting with watercolors, and we have that available here in the room where they make the jewelry. When I read people watching at an open window, I thought of the COVID days, and how sad that was when we were not allowed in, but the person was in a facility, and the caregiver or visitor had to sit outside the window and kind of try to relate to them. Sound, we have great sound here, great opportunities for sound. We had a concert on Saturday and a concert on Monday, I guess Sunday and Monday. So when my husband was with hospice, and he was bedridden, of course, he wanted the TV that plays music all day, classical music, and he would ask for that every morning, and that meant a lot to him. Musical instruments, famous speeches. Some people actually go back to their native language. They'll actually remember and talk. They had German parents, so I remember my dad talking a little bit Speaking Sie Deutsch kind of stuff, a couple sentences. But you want to talk to them in a loving way, in a gentle way, and also mention smell. I like lavender. You can buy all kind of little bottles of lavender, put them on a piece of cotton, or put them on your bedding or whatever. So making small plastic bags with different scents in it, teas, coffee beans, fragrant flowers, all kind of lotions. I think people appreciate having someone massage their hands, and maybe even their feet if they're lucky. All right, let's see where we are. Coloring books. There's tons of coloring books today. It's almost like a fad. And I find that very soothing. I remember when my husband's father died in Pennsylvania, and there was just a lot of commotion, and everybody was sad and crying. I went up to one of the bedrooms, and I had some colored pencils and crayons and markers, and made a mandala. I still have it. I don't know why I made it. I didn't sit down and plan to make it. And the mandala, everything is, round, and there's different layers, and that was very comforting to me. But it just came out of my unconscious, and he probably died 40 years ago, but I still remember that. Taste, favorite foods. Give me a coconut popsicle any day of the week. Home-baked goods, flavored drinks, and I would be happy with ice cream 3 times a day. But all these things, baking bread, just to have the smell of, baking bread in the house. Let me see where we are. When you're talking to someone that's pretty advanced, that is very advanced, you want to introduce yourself because they are confused, even if you're family. So the suggestion is you don't need to say, one of the things you don't want to say is ask them to remember this or remember that or even remember you. You want to wipe that from your repertoire. And like I said, if someone is very advanced, don't say, hey Dad, I'm here to see you today. Hi Dad, it's your son John, and I'm going to visit with you today. Because people do get confused at an advanced stage. And it's very sad, but many spouses don't recognize their husband or wife. And that is sad, but that is the reality of it. And I think this is key, very key. You have to kind of forget, and this is where people are new and someone's just diagnosed. There's a young girl in my group that her mother is diagnosed and she's living with her, but she gets so frustrated with her and yells at her. And so working with her about not getting angry. You don't say, you know that, you remember that, I told you that before, or Uncle Henry, or so you want to go into their world. And the example here is the person tells you that they just went to the Yankees game. Are you going to say, oh, that's ridiculous, you did not, they didn't even play today? No. You might say, well, who won? Did you have a hot dog at the game? So we call them little fiblets, or white lies. And it's to help the person reduce their suffering. So like I said, you get creative. Never tell them that things aren't true, because they don't know and they don't remember what is true. So you can enter into that person's logic. Your job as a caregiver will be easier, and so will their understanding. And even if you don't know what to do, you don't know what to say, you still sit with that person. And I think if you're a loving, gentle soul, even though you're just sitting there, it doesn't matter if you don't know what to do or you don't know what to say. They know you're there. Your presence is a comfort. And I think that's important. Not only for Alzheimer's, but for anybody that's maybe on hospice care, or we're all closer to dying here now than we were 20 years ago. I heard Stuart calls this place finishing school. And I love that. So I tell my family I'm in finishing school. They just kind of give you a, they don't need to know. But anyways, thank you for that, Stuart. This is Frankie's word, think like a proton, and I said, what the heck does that mean? And anyway, it's being positive, right, Frankie?
That's right. Electrons and protons.
Okay. So they'll putting their hands in the gravy, and you, instead of saying, please stop doing that, you can take their hand out and show them. Gestures are important. You know, put their hands in your lap. Put your hands in your lap. Keeping choices simple. It's not, what do you want to have for dinner, Harry? It's, or what do you want to have for lunch? You might just get no response, most likely. So you can give a simple choice. Do you want macaroni or do you want a sandwich? Or you can just say, we're having macaroni for lunch. You break it down into simple steps because they can't make complicated decisions. You keep it simple. I don't think you would want to say, well, now you get up today, comb your hair, and then we're going to go out and have lunch, and then we'll probably run into Aunt Mabel, and after that I'm going to stop at the bank. And so if you go into that kind of monologue, they're not going to remember what you said, what you started to say in the beginning of that dissertation. So you want to keep it simple. Brushing your teeth. Pick up the toothbrush, put the toothbrush on your teeth, and even if you have to mimic and move your toothbrush back and forth on your teeth. And of course, we're talking in advanced stages. You want to speak to the person as an adult. And I hear women do this, maybe I used to do it, I don't know, but baby talk. I hear it around, and it's like, ee. But anyway, don't we look nice today? Would you like to go for a walk? It's not we. And you're better off saying, you look very nice today. Does that make sense? Did you get that? Yeah. So they're adults, they've got the brain changing, so you want to speak to them. They're still adults. Things that maybe we don't normally think of, like your tone of voice. If I say, well, I think it's time you got out of bed, that's very punitive. So maybe it could be, oh, you slept late, let's go down and have some eggs. Your facial expression. Everybody likes a smile. And when you talk to people, and if you look at people's eyes, I've learned to be a listener only because I've been a therapist for a long, long time. But I had to really learn that. If I'm talking to you, and you're starting to tell me something, and so I kind of look over here and say, I wonder what he's doing back there. And then I come back to you. But I'm not really with you. I'm not focused with you. So, and these are kind of general rules. If you're talking with someone one-on-one or across the table, look them in the eyes and you'll have a deeper, more meaningful experience. and you focus on them. But we're here, there, and everywhere. That's just where we are. Speak slowly. I have a friend in the back of the room, Mr. Bob, and he has a very nice voicemail on him when I call his number. It's very kind, and please leave your name and your number. And then very kindly he says, and please speak slowly. And at first I thought, well, that's weird, but the more I hear it, I slow down. And thank you for that, Bob. Please speak slowly. He's back there. Be aware that we all have hearing or vision problems. That's just part of being this age. I don't know if you want to smear Vaseline on your glasses, but and if you can use humor, even in the support groups that I do, sometimes we just have a big laugh, and it's just great, and it feels good. And I don't know what it's about, it doesn't even matter, but to laugh with people, that's therapeutic. Dr. Spock. Frankie put this slide in. I wasn't a Dr. Spock fan, but he said, now Jim, that is just not logical, and that's the way we want to relate to people that have advanced dementia. We don't want to be logical, we want to enter their world. So I guess Dr. Spock knew what he was saying. People with advanced dementia, they do get, they sometimes get angry, they get confrontive. I had a couple that was a dear school teacher, and her husband was always with her, and they were always holding hands, and they were very loving, and I admired them. And one day they were waiting to go into an Alzheimer program, a gathering event, and she was sitting out in the front lobby, and she just stamped on his foot, and she really hurt his foot, and that was so out of character. I couldn't believe she did that, but she needed some short-acting medicine for agitation, and that period was starting where she was angry and agitated. So sometimes the personality change. It's the same with me with my husband. This is a guy that always supportive, kind to everybody, and then this doctor, he tells me he's going to be angry and he's going to be loud and he's going to shout, and I thought somebody stuck a knife in me when I heard that. I've been with him 30 years. That we don't relate. We've never related to each other like that. And with dressing, they can dress in all different manners. So she's putting her bra on the outside. So instead of a negative statement like, you know better, you don't wear that on the outside. No, she doesn't know better. Let me help you. And help her get dressed. And I mentioned this before, don't you remember? Don't you remember? Don't you remember? No, they don't. They don't remember. And sometimes we don't remember. So, that's where sometimes the fiblets come in. So if the person is saying to you the content of what they're talking about is not real, it's false. If you consider their feelings aren't real. And sometimes when people get agitated, a urinary tract infection is very common. And when people get urinary tract infections, it almost makes you crazy. It really affects your whole thought process. Or if they need to go to the bathroom, but they can't tell you that, you could walk them into the bathroom and point at the toilet. So those are using gestures. Written signs, I told you about the lady that were having pork chops for breakfast 37 times in one day, and she put Post-it notes everywhere, and he stopped asking. And we thought that was like a modern miracle. We talked about white lies. All right, Dad is saying, how is your brother? And the young man has a newspaper that said the brother was killed in a wreck. So you're not gonna say to your Dad, you know that John died. You could say, I haven't talked to him for a while, or something without bringing up, because there's no point in causing more distress and more suffering by saying he was killed in a wreck. Okay. I have to laugh. I want to acknowledge Frankie. Frankie was a godsend to me. I can do verbal groups and do papers and do therapy, but I don't know one way to make a slide. She came over with this little laptop, and I know she's magical because she talks to the laptop. And so she's saying to the laptop, she said, I would like a picture of a man that's sad because he has dementia. He's wearing a red checkered shirt. He has on blue jeans and he's sitting in a wheelchair. And guess what comes up on that picture? Exactly like she says, so I know she's magical. So I tried it on my laptop and I said, I would like a guy maybe 75, tall, good looking, has a good sense of humor, and wants to hang out with me. Nothing happened. So I don't have that magic touch, or maybe that's AI, is it? Is that the new AI? It blew my socks off. She would just say what she wants and a picture would appear. You don't have to sit and wait. It's really quite magical. And I want to thank Sue Sheridan back there somewhere. She spent about 2 hours with me. I went up to her apartment and got out she knows how to make slides. She did the previous talk here, which I hear was wonderful, and I'm sorry that I didn't see it. But she also knows how to make slides, so these would not be up here if it was just me. So I'm so grateful to both Frankie and Sue. We do have a program here called Intermissions. I think they do it in Plumtree. Does anybody know particularly about intermissions? That somebody goes, is it your husband goes?
No, I've visited and talked with them and they wanted some help.
Okay, so I think it's 4 days a week. I've only gone to an orientation. I haven't really participated in it. And I think they do light things all day, right? I mean, they might do games, I think Demarius comes in and throws a ball. Can I ask you, what did you think about it when you went?
Well, they were starting it, I helped at the beginning, and they're very innovative. They're really continuous learning. It's a progression. And most of it seems very positive and very successful.
Good. Yeah.
I mean, if I had somebody that needed it, I would highly think that's a wonderful, safe place to be.
Okay. There are several women here in my group that their husbands go.
I volunteer there.
Okay, well, tell us.
They do, she has programs.
Can you stand up?
Takesha has programs that work your brain, different sides of the brain. You don't know that it's happening, what side you're working, but she has that. And it's done in tasks. It may be finding missing words or trying to connect dots or something like that. We have discussions, topics that they are interested in. We do work on balance and some kind of exercise program. It varies from day to day. Just some days they want to do all kinds of products, all kinds of activities, and other days they just want to talk. And she knows how to read them, and she flows with them, and they all seem to have a good time when they come.
Okay. Bella?
And they have lunch, around the large table and the roost
Okay.
in front of the fireplace. So that's another social aspect.
Yeah, okay, okay. So that is based right here. It is $85 a day, just so you know. The Alzheimer's Association is the national organization. A lot of my material I get from Alzheimer's Association. I've done some training of people that want to be facilitators of groups. I've had a couple doctors that were interested, and I was really pleased because that's not high on their on their list to learn. But they're located South Loop East. They're 24/7. They have a helpline. If you're in a jam, you should be able to pick up the phone at 2 o'clock and call them anytime. They have a website. I know they have a group for people that are in the early stages. There it is. So the main office is in Chicago, but this is our Houston office. I don't see anything else here. One or two things, as far as the increasing a risk for us to get it, it's all the things that we know about. Now, it doesn't mean we necessarily do them, but a healthy diet, to be socially active, and this is a perfect place. I mean, if you can't find somebody to sit and talk to here, then something's wrong, because people are I find very open and very friendly. Diabetes will double your risks. The high blood sugar could be problems in the brain. Avoid excess alcohol, of course, don't smoke, exercise, and I see that they're doing some mindfulness. Kate in the exercise group has a mindfulness class about how to relax and how to talk to yourself when you're stressed, and I went to one. I thought she did a great job. So all of those behaviors that we like to do is drink and eat. They cause high cholesterol. You want to try to keep your blood pressure down and your cholesterol, and heart disease, because we can end up with a dementia just from unhealthy living. And why get tested? When this first came out, and I was interested in it, and I thought, well, I don't want to know. I don't want to go and get a workup and find out. What if it's positive? But I've learned differently now. There some situations where it would be reversible. If you had a brain tumor, a benign brain tumor, severe medication reaction, alcoholism, depression, dehydration, those are all things that if you got tested, you could be treated for. So that is a reason to get tested. This is a new blood test. Actually, Frankie told me about it, and she put the word hope in there, and that can diagnose Alzheimer's. I haven't had time to research it. It's called Lumipulse, and it's, Frankie, do you want to say something about it?
Basically, you talked about the amyloid plaques and the tau, and this looks at the ratio of those two,
Okay,
and that can be predictive of problems.
okay. And I read, I had a laugh, Amazon and Walmart will sell the test. Okay, so there you go. Why not, of course. And I found this little quote, and I'll leave you with this because it spoke to me. It says, the 3 most indispensable caregiving tools that you can own are 1, a well-oiled sense of humor, 2, a finely tuned curiosity for how the brain and body work. Okay, and 3, this is the best one, a first-class ability to forgive yourself for your missteps. I mean, I just have to say for caregivers, when my husband had the tumor, he had 2 surgeries, he had radiation, he had 2 or 3 experimental drug protocols at MD Anderson. So there's always hope that maybe the next thing will save his life. So it's not easy to be a caregiver. It's very demanding, it's very exhausting. And I tell my groups, I said, you're all angels, you're all angels. It's a very, giving so much of yourself. And I did for my husband for 2 years, and I thought if it were me instead of him that had the disease, he would have taken care of me. So that I try to remember that when I got frustrated with him, because you do get frustrated, you do get resentful, and all those feelings. So, thank you for being so attentive. Stuart.
Barb, I'm thinking that Alzheimer's has a predisposition to male over female. Is that correct?
Who knows the answer to that? What's the answer? The question? Are there more men or more women that get Alzheimer's disease? What do you think? 2/3 of people that are diagnosed with Alzheimer's are women. And one of the things is, all right, we live longer, right? Basically, we live longer. And the other thing is that hormones are protective. But I remember going through menopause, and it's like, do you want to stay up? Do you want to take estrogen? Well, there's advantages to taking estrogen, but if you don't, but if you do, your risk of breast cancer and that will increase. So that was it. It's women, 2/3 women, for living longer and for their estrogen loss. Okay? So you lucked out on that one. Any comments or any questions? Hi, go ahead.
I came from a family, from my father's side, had a very strong family history of Alzheimer.
Mm-hmm.
My father, 6 siblings, 3 boys, 3 girls, every single one have Alzheimer.
Wow.
Every single one of the 6?
Yes.
Wow.
So the ratio is 50-50.
Yeah.
Yeah. But I want to say is, they all, the symptoms start showing in late 70s, mostly early 80s. And they all have a complete, finished their career. Physically, they're very healthy.
Mm-hmm.
My father, and then I noticed my father's side, all the relatives, they are very positive type of attitude.
Mm-hmm.
So we took care of my father. My parents lived in Kansas, and we were here.
Mm-hmm.
One thing I learned was every patient, they have a window period where they behave, where they are more agreeable.
Mm-hmm.
And for my father, was after he has a good night's sleep, breakfast, he's happy.
Mm-hmm.
It's like a baby.
Mm-hmm.
So there's a few hours before he gets hungry for lunch. That's the best time I take him to the doctor's appointment.
Mm-hmm.
He's agreeable,
Mm-hmm.
he will not fight with me. So I think that's one key that you can see the pattern.
Mm-hmm.
And for my father, after lunch, you have to take a nap. After nap, there's another few hours to lunch that he's okay. And after dinner, forget it. He's tired, the end of the day. So there's a window period where if you want to take care of business.
I think that's an excellent addition.
Yeah.
The moods do change. I
Yes.
mean, our moods change,
Yes.
but they change rapidly.
Right,
And
right.
if you have that period, just like you're saying, I'm glad you said that. That's really an important
That's
thing to say.
Yeah.
Yes.
And then another thing for my relative, they live too long. My father died when he was 90,
Okay.
and I have 2 aunts. One one uncle, they live almost 100 years old.
Wow.
So they're all, 90 up.
Yeah.
So therefore, my previous primary doctor thought that was the point. She said, you guys, your family lived too long. So she asked me, where are all your aunt and uncle? I said, oh, there's one in Hong Kong, some in China, only my aunt and my father in United States. So my doctor said, oh, thank goodness. Because she said, your family exhausted the pension, the social security. But one thing about the test, I went to see a neurologist last month because of this family history. And I want to know, and then he mentioned about taking the test. And for my personal feeling is, I want to take the test. I don't want to be in denial.
Okay.
I will accept if I test, there's a positive,
Okay.
and I will deal with it. And that's one of the reasons my goal was when I turned 70, I want to move into this kind of facility, to, make friends, and also my husband Philip, he has started having his own group hanging out, and I think that's very important. I have seen so many friends and families say, why don't you want to know? Why do you want to know? Because there's no cure for it. But for me, it's if that's what you're gonna have, I think you have to have a positive attitude to deal with it.
You sound very wise and very accepting.
Yeah, exactly.
Thank you.
I will accept if
Okay.
that's what, and also, for the neurologist, she find me very interesting because he said, oh, I never have patient has such a strong family history. But when I watched my dad, my aunt went through it, it's okay. It's okay. It's just like.
That's a wonderful place to get to, of
Yes.
accepting whatever we have, whatever.
Right. To me, it's like, I accept it, I can deal with it, it's okay. It's
You're
not
very
the end-
wise.
It's not the end of the world.
I applaud you. That's great. Thank you for saying.
Does that blood test, does that take place with an MRI?
No. I mean, the MRI can actually, I understand, it slices of brains. They're not just seeing one organ, but, slices. They have to do PET scans first, and then they see the plaques and the tangles. Yeah.
Is short-term memory lost under the umbrella of dementia or not?
Is it short-time memory loss under the umbrella?
Like I tend to forget, some people's name or, something I've done before.
There's a whole other program we could do. That's normal aging and then Alzheimer's. And if anybody wants to do any research, there's massive amounts of stuff on this online. The Mayo Clinic I have a book from them, and they have wonderful information. And you could have mild cognitive impairment. You could have it, I could have it, we could all have it. That doesn't mean that we'll progress through the other stages of Alzheimer's. And then how do you tease out what is normal aging, forgetting things? But I think one of the keys is, with Alzheimer's progression, you don't remember, you don't recall things. But they're gone. There's holes up here in the cheese. Did that answer your question? Sort of?
Yeah, well, now I think I can ask my question better. How do you differentiate normal aging from dementia?
How do you differentiate?
Yeah.
The only way you can diagnose or or at this point, that dementia or Alzheimer's is diagnosed, you probably have to see a neurologist, and there's no single simple test. You have to go through a battery of tests, and probably a PET scan, they'll do memory testing, a medical workup, so there is no single test.
What about the medications you read about that will slow down the progression? What about someone taking those, not having a test to see if they have Alzheimer's? Is there any danger to taking those medications?
I didn't want to get into the medications today, because we want to do more of the helping things, but I've been working with people with this disease, and most of the families that come, the caregivers, have not felt that the medications, the basic ones, were very helpful, and they end up stopping them. I understand that if you're on some of the medications in the early stages, it might slow it down. But there are two caregivers here that live here, and they have their spouses are getting infusions, like 1 a month, of major IV infusions of major drugs. Liquembi is one of them. And one man has improved, he had a reduction of plaques and tangles on the Liquembi, but one of the side effects is a brain bleed. And so he almost died, but I said, would you go on it again? And he said he would, because he improved, his memory improved. But so there's no clean, nice answer yet. But MIT is doing some wonderful research. I don't think it'll be in my lifetime, but I think that they will finally have something that can stop these plaques and tangles from messing up our head. Okay? Thank you for your attention. You're great.